Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar to discover how Grifols leverages engineering content management to achieve operational success. Our first presenter today is Ken Oxford of BlueCielo, who will provide you with some background information on BlueCielo and our software solution to discover, monitor, and protect engineering content throughout the asset lifecycle. Ken has been with BlueCielo for over 5 years and has 10 years of experience with engineering content management, including an in-depth understanding of the unique requirements of the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industries. Ken will then hand things over to David Cawthorn of Grifols, who will discuss how his company has implemented BlueCielo's engineering content management solution to achieve full lifecycle compliant control of engineering and asset information in an FDA-regulated GMP environment. But before we begin, a bit of housekeeping. I want to let everyone know that you're in listen-only mode. Please make note of any questions that you may have as we go along, and at the end of the presentation, we'll invite you to type your questions, which I will then read to Ken and David for them to answer. Additionally, all those attending today will receive a thank you email from us with a link to view the recorded version of this webinar. So with that, Ken, you can go ahead and begin whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Susan. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. It's great to see such a large turnout. As you can imagine, we get a lot of requests for customer references and anecdotes. Everyone wants to hear them, but few life sciences companies allow their employees to share internal processes and success anecdotes in a public setting. That's why we're especially grateful to David and Grifols for their willingness to speak today. I believe the information David will share with you in a few minutes will open your eyes to the opportunities for bringing process excellence to your company. Effective management of engineering content certainly isn't flashy or trendy, but the results of a well-thought-out and well-implemented solution can have a transformative impact on your business, more specifically on the operation and profitability of your plant. Before I pass the ball to David, I'd like to share 2 slides with you to ensure everyone on the call has a common baseline of the intent and breadth of our solutions. I know we have a mix of new names and faces, as well as long-time customers on the call, so let's make sure we are all working from the same foundation. I'm sorry, the slide's not progressing. There we go. Our goal is to provide you a scalable portfolio of business solutions, one that allows you to implement functionality appropriate for the business environment, but one that doesn't become a hindrance as your business environment becomes more complex. Instead, provide an additional functionality to match this growing complexity. In this diagram, we map engineering complexity against intensity of change. And what we mean to express is that there needs to be a proportionate and appropriate level of functionality to effectively address the business situation, one where increased complexity and the sensitivity to change are high. In other words, if the business risk due to mishandling of the change management process is high, then you'd better have the right tools in place to manage the risk to an acceptable level. So as the challenges get bigger and the impact of change increases, we offer you appropriate levels of solutions. First, with a simple path to migrate you away from file servers and local folders, we offer a core foundation of document management. But as you begin to encounter more complex challenges, such as parallel projects and external collaboration, we allow you to move on to more robust strategies of engineering data management. And ultimately, you can address your plant-wide information integration challenges by leveraging your current asset management structure. This level of maturity is called asset information management. This final level is where Grifols is today. They've taken on the challenge and realized a plant-wide asset information management strategy with great returns to the business. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Here we have 3 states of a plant's information lifecycle: the static or master data state, the transitional or work-in-progress state, and the collaborative or data exchange state. If you can't manage and control information as it flows through these different states, you introduce risk at every point of disconnect. And in the life sciences world, you risk introducing noncompliance. The first level of maturity we saw on the previous slide was basic document management. Key functionality provided in this level are what I like to call library services, which are delivered through a combination of a document repository and business logic. This functionality includes import and management of documents and drawings, as well as the associated metadata, document workflows, version and revision control, CAD integration to other tools such as Microsoft Office Suite, efficient search capabilities, viewing technologies, plus the ability to redline and markup. Additionally, information can be moved into projects to isolate the change process, while ensuring users of the published information only have access to the appropriate version. And finally, historical project information needs to be archived for future audits or for repurposing. Additionally, the complex environment necessitates concurrent change, where risk is needed to be managed, given the maintenance and capital projects will compete for ownership of the same content. Finally, as this information is returned to the operational as-built potential environment, the environment for ineffective handover exists, or even the inability to easily find the information introduces this unacceptable risk, which is why the top level of maturity is so important and yields the greatest rewards. This level, which we call asset information management, couples your asset tag or location tag structure with your engineering information to optimize the value of this information to your plant, yielding better decisions and greater control of your risk. But overshadowing it all is the need to do this in an environment of regulatory compliance. For this audience, that means adhering to the e-records and e-signature requirements of 21 CFR Part 11. While I haven't addressed any particular product or module or names, you can safely assume we have a product suite that addresses all of these challenges and can be applied as needed to take you to the higher levels of maturity, and of course, to realize the associated benefits. I'm happy to say that Grifols is at the highest level of maturity model. They've seen the environment increase in complexity due to capital expansions, and they've confronted the growing threat of risk due to change by applying processes and technologies. And through the implementation of Meridian Enterprise Suite, they've managed to not only control the complex situation, but to thrive and grow. And with that, I'd like to pass it back over to David, who will tell you the whole story. Susan, if you don't mind, can you please pass control to David? Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here. Got a little presentation for you. I hope you find it interesting. Let me tell you a little bit about what you're going to see today.
Yeah, thanks Ken and David. Yeah, we just want to give a brief introduction of David. He has been with Grifols for 18 years and has over 25 years of experience in engineering. And today he's just going to go into more detail, like Ken said, about their implementation of BlueCielo and how they use it to achieve full lifecycle control of their engineering and asset information. So David, go ahead and begin whenever you're ready.
Okay. Again, thanks everybody. Sorry I jumped the gun a little bit. Well, first let me tell you a little bit about me. I know that, or let me tell you what we're going to do today. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to tell you about our plant here in Clayton, North Carolina, and I'll go over what we've done with our engineering document management system from the beginning to what we have now, and we'll go over some basic terms and go over kind of how we use it today, and then we're going to walk through an actual example of a day of a life of a document going through workflows, and then I'm going to briefly touch on the Explorer client and Maximo integrations, and I'll show you a little bit about how we use SharePoint. As Susan said, my name is David Cawthorn. I'm a systems analyst, one of three for Meridian here at Grifols Therapeutics in Clayton. I got a couple of associate's degrees long time ago. I began my career as a CAD draftsman using MicroStation, working mostly as a civil structural architectural designer. And in 1996, I came to this plant and worked my way to drafting supervisor and later to my present position as systems administrator. At Grifols, we make life-saving medicines from human plasma, treat many serious diseases such as immunity disorders, hemophilia, respiratory problems, and many more. This site started out as Cutter Labs Miles back in 1972 and then became Bayer the year before I started in 1995. Then later sold to Talicris in 2005 and became Grifols. Grifols bought us in 2011. I'll tell you all this because somewhere in all this turnover, we had to wrestle and maintain control of drawings and documents. And it wasn't easy a lot of times. It was quite a challenge, to be honest. Maybe this rings a bell with some of you here in attendance. Now, from the beginning, documents and drawings were virtually uncontrolled. At one time, all the original construction drawings of the plant weren't even located on this site. When they finally were, some were immediately destroyed because we didn't have room to keep them all. Really. And the ones we kept were housed in a set of flat files located above the maintenance area in an open chain link fence under a fire sprinkler that had an occasional drip. Really. Now, that was a long time ago. Over the years, as CAD was developed, the site started using more electronically generated drawings and kept them in a shared network drive, but there was no revision control and no real security at all. There was an effort at a document management solution at one time, but it wasn't being used when I first began to work here. In 1998, we started using Documentum as our first real attempt to electronically manage our drawings. During that time, we brought in roughly 50,000 drawings, including previous versions, and we had about 125 users. Initially, it took a massive effort to populate all the data, the metadata, and the properties, and all that stuff that document management requires, like file names, titles, associated equipment, etc. We use spreadsheets and a bulk endpoint port to accomplish that. In 2002, we finally established a means to assign ownership of drawings to responsible engineers, which was huge. It was a huge leap in focus on just the engineers and the site personnel really seeing that control was necessary. And eventually we began to use Documentum or the EDMS to put some documents in as well, because primarily it had only been drawings. Well, our software became long outdated. The servers were wheezing and coughing out their last breath. So in 2011, we upgraded. We chose a new and better solution, Meridian. At that time, we went with 2009A and have upgraded again since then. But going to our new document management system required quite a bit of metadata cleanup. Property cleanup is an ongoing process. During the time of Meridian 2009A, we jumped to 375 users, many of which were view-only web client users. And if you counted all current versions of their previous version and their previous versions, we had expanded to well over 300,000 documents and drawings. Probably 90% of that was drawings, not documents, but drawings. We also began to leverage our integrations with IBM Maximo and Microsoft SharePoint. Meridian 2009A was fully capable and set up to use with electronic signatures, but that's the direction we all wanted to go, but the site wasn't quite ready. We used what we called a hybrid system. We passed around a signature page, signatures were handwritten, and then they were scanned and added to the original documents. Again, that's what you might call Meridian Phase 1. Later we upgraded to 2012, Meridian 2012. It might appear that we went down in the number of users from 375 to 231, but actually the previous slide showed all users, both Office client and web client. There were 375 user accounts. Our setup today is such that we don't require web users to have named accounts, so they're not included in the 231 users I show here. There also, the number of document appears lower too. Again, I couldn't easily show you an apples-to-apples comparison. Meridian's current configuration doesn't easily count the previous versions of a document. Suffice it to say that there are well over 500,000 documents in the system when you count all the previous versions of master and project documents and drawings. Rights and permissions are assigned by groups, editors, reviewers, approvers, coordinators, administrators. They're all participants or contributors to Meridian and thus have the Meridian Office client installed. Explorer client users, again, are web, read-only viewers. We're proud to say that currently our engineering department fully employs electronic signatures in Meridian. And to be honest, at first it was a bit of a struggle to get everybody on board. There was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth, but soon everyone settled into the routine, and now everything operates pretty smoothly and folks are pretty happy with the system. Okay, let's go over some terms and concepts real quickly. I'm not going to take the time to try to define everything that has to do with EDMS and Meridian in particular. I'm going to make the assumption that everybody is somewhat familiar. I thought I'd just go over the terms that may be specific to our setup at Grifols. And also, for simplicity's sake, most of the time when I say documents, I mean documents and drawings. So let's make that leap together. First term to talk about for us is general type. It's the broadest major grouping, for instance, architectural drawings or validation documents are general type. Functional types, on the other hand, are subdivisions of those broader categories. Architectural drawings are broken down by functional types such as plan drawings or detail drawings. One of the functional types for validation documents is risk assessments. Renditions, very important concept, very important that we understand what that is. They're PDFs of the content files of the system. They contain watermarks, print stamps, electronic signatures, all of which are applied at the appropriate time in the workflow by Meridian. Now, document types, whereas general and functional type are properties of a document, this is maybe even a broader category, if you will, if you'll allow me that. Controlled documents are those that get electronically signed at the end of a workflow. Documents such as design description documents, we call them SDDs, and functional requirement specs, FRSs, are examples. Managed documents are maybe consider them a little less than that. These documents are things like meeting minutes, contractor timesheets, things like that. You want to keep them for posterity, but they may not be considered as official as controlled documents. You still want to control them. As Ken was telling you earlier, the master area is really important. It's a really important place and a concept for you to understand. We consider that area pristine. Nothing can become a master without first being approved in some way. No changes can be made to documents and drawings in the master area. None. Modifications are made in project folders to copies of masters. The file names get prefixed with a project number to make them easily identifiable. Another concept that Ken touched on is concurrent engineering. It refers to the concept of modifying copies of the same master in more than one project. Meridian tracks this very well for us. We need to recognize that Meridian treats its content as one object. This object consists of the Meridian metadata, the native content file like a Word document, and the PDF rendition. Clicking on a file name in Meridian actually accesses all three of these pieces of the objects simultaneously. We recommend that our users always refer to the rendition when reviewing content. It's the best way to make sure unapproved documents aren't used by mistake. Now, I struggled a little bit with how to introduce this, but when I first came to Grifols, I came from a project engineering company where we worked on projects, and we worked for companies like Grifols. So there's a big shift in mentality between someone who works on a project and someone who is doing the maintenance of a facility forever and ever. Projects have a scheduled conclusion. Maintenance of a facility is infinite. We have some drawings with nearly 100 revisions to them. That will never happen in a project, obviously, but we have to keep track of all the project changes that happen to this one very important drawing. Right. A project just needs to depict what is going to change during the project. What's the project focused on? When you're talking about maintenance of a facility, you need to always show what is and how all the different projects may relate to one another. All right. A project needs to only show what's necessary to get their job done. Matter of fact, if you show too much, you confuse people. So you really want to just show what's going on for your project and emphasize that. In the maintenance of a facility kind of philosophy, you need to show everything as is. Like, you can understand that. And a project ends as a package. It's all neatly tied up and wrapped, and it's just what the project did. And when you're thinking about maintaining a facility, they live forever, and they got to react to each project change in order to maintain that strict as-built standard that you need, because when the next project starts, they need to see that as-built standard of the entire facility. And when there's any kind of maintenance work going on, the technicians that are out there turning wrenches and connecting wires, they need to have what's as-built. Okay, let's take a bird's eye view of our vault. Think of it as a giant box, and this box contains the master area that we've been talking about and a retired area for those documents that are out of date. Then there are project areas. Remember, this is where any revision takes place. Can't change anything in the master area. Make a copy, goes to the project area. So here's some examples of some managed documents. Bills of material, studies, reports, scopes of work. They're all governed by this workflow. It's very simple, as you can see. You're working on your file in the draft state. You can have it reviewed or not in this workflow, and then you're out of the workflow. Next are control documents. As we mentioned before, design description documents, functional requirement specs, validation documents. Those are control documents. They require a little more involved workflow to ensure that once they're e-signed, they're right. These are all reviewed, checked by a coordinator, and then approved by electronic signature. Last, we have effective documents. We have this document type for engineering procedures and such. This workflow is just like the control workflow, except it has a couple of additional states at the end to facilitate a training period before the document becomes effective. The terminal states of all three workflows indicate that the documents are released from the workflow. I'll explain a little bit more about what that means later, but it's an important concept. Project documents and drawings that are released from the workflow are still in the project, but not actively being worked on. Now let's see how concurrent engineering works. What I'm going to show next may seem a little complicated, but it's something that Meridian handles very well for us. When you think about project documents, imagine that gray box depicting the Meridian Vault much bigger with 15 different projects in it. In our world, many drawings and documents are being revised in different projects at the same time. Notice the same document is being modified in projects 1, 8, and 12. And the same drawing is being modified in projects 4, 6, and 15. As an example, a pure water system serves an entire building, and there's only one drawing that shows how it all routes because it's so big. There may be 3 different projects planning to make changes to that system, and those projects have different completion dates. Meridian tracks those project copies and monitors when each copy went out and the order they're released from the project to the master area again. As I said earlier, this probably seems very complicated, and it is if you try to do it manually. Meridian handles it all very well for us, so that in the end, it's easy for our users. All right, so let's see what the real thing looks like. This is the Grifols Vault. Here's what the users see. It's a pretty standard Meridian interface. You got your menu bar and your toolbar. You got the Explorer pane. You got the Properties pane. You got the Viewer pane. Okay, so that's where we start. What I'd like to show you now is a day in the life of a Meridian document. We'll take an existing document, make a project copy, and walk it through its workflow. First, an engineer or a validation specialist has a need to revise a document, so they find it in Meridian. The project they're assigned to is going to be making a change in the area that this document covers. The simplest way, if you know the file name of a document, is to use the Find tool to locate it. If you don't know the name, you can always use a more comprehensive search or drill down to it in the Explorer view. You see the find results here for CCD 000-00025. There are two hits in the results pane. One is the document number only, and the other is prefixed with the project number of a previous revision. The project number is APHUS, a bunch of zeros and a 4. It's important to select the document without the project prefix. That's the master document. You'll notice the document status is retired for the old project copy and approved for the master. To make a project copy of the selected document, simply right-click it, select Master Project Copy from the menu that pops up, and then click Create Project Copy. Meridian goes through a couple of dialogues to select properties relevant to the project, one of which is the project number, and the project copies are prefixed with that project number. Now your document is in its workflow in the draft state. Notice the revision number gets an alpha suffix. That way you can always tell what master revision you started with. Draft is obviously where an author or an editor makes changes to the document. Now I'm going to access my to-do list. And we'll be working out of my to-do list for almost the entire time that we're in Meridian. Everything that's on my plate can be found here regardless of where it's located in the file folder structure. Here we can double-click the document to open it in its native application, in this case Microsoft Word. I'll make my changes and I'll save and exit the document. The next workflow step is send for review. From my to-do list, in a right-click, we access the document workflow menu. Notice throughout the workflow that the choices in this menu are limited to what the user can do at that time. And it really cuts down on mistakes. The steps are pretty much go forward or go back, and you only have those choices when you're in that particular state. So we select Send for Review. At that point, a property wizard appears in which you can populate the properties and select the people that are responsible for the document in its different states. To facilitate this demo, I selected myself for all the different roles just to make it a little easier. Notice the reason for change property. You can see we have choices of all sorts of construction phases and such. For this demo, we'll use issue as master because we intend for this document to become the latest version of the master after it's approved. But you can see the other reasons for different project phases. You'll see the importance of reason for change a little later. After I click Next, a dialog appears that determines how the renditions will be made. After that, the document is moved forward in the workflow. There are many things that Meridian does in the background to facilitate the transition from one workflow state to another. It uses the responsible people that you just selected to send emails, put documents on the proper My To-Do list, to make renditions, update properties, and a lot more. Renditions get an e-signature, or get a signature page as a cover sheet that will be populated in a later transition. It also gets a watermark indicating the document status. Now let me make a statement here. For the demo today, I chose to show you our workflow as using documents as an example instead of using drawings because it allows me to easily show you some of the different features. But rest assured, it works just as easily for drawings as well. As a matter of fact, the reason we got into document management was for drawings to begin with. And then we've recently, when I say recently, in the last several years, have started doing documents and doing them very well with Meridian. At all times, after the draft state, the user opens the rendition rather than the native content. Either that or they can open it read-only in the native application. This ensures that in case of, if you got multiple reviewers, the document doesn't get modified after the first reviewer has seen it. However, we designed a way for reviewers to be able to add comments that can either be considered by other reviewers or sent back to the author editor. We mostly use this method for Microsoft Word documents, and we can use the Track Changes feature. It's a great way to show exactly what's been changed. After the reviewer's done making his changes, it makes a right-click document workflow to send the document back to review. Any other reviewer can see his changes, and at this point, the decision must be made to send it back to the editor or accept the changes and send forward. And for this demo, I'm just going to keep going forward all the time. All right, notice how my to-do list has changed. It changes with every step. The document has moved to another section in my to-do list, and it's named for the current workflow state. And keep in mind, I got an email notification as well. So I get an email, it signals me to go to Meridian. I go to my to-do list, and I can see the document that it just sent me an email about. There's also a link in that email that will do the same thing. As stated earlier, the coordinators have a very important job. They must open documents and sanity check them, if you'll allow me that. They're not subject matter experts. They aren't expected to go through a document word by word and verify that the content's correct. Have track changes been accepted from the Microsoft Word copy? Do the revision number in Meridian and in the document content match? Meaning the property. Does the property match what's typed in the document? Is the correct document format used? Are there any typos in this document, in the header or anything like that? We also designed a way for the coordinator to make typo and format corrections at this point. The command used is called update document. That ensures the integrity of the workflow has been observed and is essential. This job of the coordinator is of utmost importance. Their job is to basically police what's going on in this workflow process. Okay, so once the coordinator is done with his job, it's time to send for approvals. At this point, the person or persons designed to approve the document have been involved in meetings and discussions involving all the changes that are being made. They already know that what this document is supposed to look like, and this is their official sign-off. Multiple approvers are possible here. They can all look at the document rendition at the same time. However, they must all approve the document before it can move forward. If one person rejects it, it goes back to the coordinator who facilitates a resolution. That means he's going to go back to have some meetings, and he's going to find out what the problem is and decide whether or not it needs to go back to the editor. Hopefully the team had enough discussions beforehand before it ever came to approvals, and they've done enough pre-work to keep the document from needing to go all the way back to the editor. As always, a simple right-click document workflow reveals the choices the approver has. A dialog appears where the approver tells why the document is being signed. It's always for content approval at this stage of the game. And notice also that reminder there that the e-sig is equivalent to a handwritten signature. That's every time someone electronically signs something in our system, they see this disclaimer, just as a reminder. Next is the actual electronic signature, and it consists of a unique ID and password. Here at Grifols, we just use our regular network login information. Now a little bit about electronic signatures. Grifols is subject to the rules and regulations put forth by regulatory bodies around the world. In the U.S., it's the Food and Drug Administration. Meridian Meridian and e-signatures in particular are compliant with the FDA Code of Federal Regulations, Chapter 21, Part 11. It defines the criteria under which electronic records and electronic signatures are considered to be trustworthy, reliable, and equivalent to paper records. If there are multiple approvers, the last e-signature kicks off the next step into the final approver. Our quality group fills this role. As with first-line approvers, the quality personnel should have been in discussions regarding any changes and agreements that were made, so that by this time it's basically a rubber stamp signature. The e-sig process is exactly the same as it is with first-line approvals. You find the document in My To-Do, you right-click the document workflow, and then you e-sign with a signature reason and disclaimer, and then finally the electronic signature. Here we're looking at the first and second page of our document rendition. This is what the e-sigs look like. The rendition contains a new page that doesn't exist in the Word document. It acts as a cover sheet and a signature page for controlled documents. On it you can see who signed, the date and time of the signature reason. The same thing appears on each page of the document in the upper right-hand corner margin. After the final approver signs, the document is automatically released from the workflow. It's still in the project, but no longer actively being worked on. This is where the reason for change comes into play. We talked about that earlier. If the reason for change is anything other than issue as master, the document can only be placed back in the workflow for a different reason. The only way your project copy can get back into the master area to become the latest master revision is for the reviewers and approvers to have approved it, knowing it was for the purpose of it becoming a master. If that's the case, the coordinator releases as a master revision. Your project copy has a project prefix removed from its name, and it supersedes a previous master version. The alpha suffix is removed from its revision number, and it's advanced to the next whole number. Also, the project copy is preserved by retiring it in the project. What you've seen is a brief overview of our review and approval workflow. I'm showing you a lot of detail just for your understanding, but rest assured the user experience is not as complicated as what I just showed you. It's fairly simple to follow, really. Again, it works the same for drawings. Next, I want to quickly show you how our read-only consumers access approved masters and how this information can be shared on the web. BlueCielo's web solution is called the Explorer Client. We use it for read-only access to documents and drawings in the master area only. No project information can be seen here. This is a precaution so our mechanics, for instance, will only see approved as-built documents and drawings. The Explorer Client makes it easy to disseminate the latest approved information to everyone. At our Grifols facility, you don't need a user account to access the Explorer Client. Any employee with access to our server can access our drawings via the intranet. There's possibly as many as 1,500 at our site. So it's pretty powerful. It doesn't require you to log in. However, you cannot create or revise any documents with it. I want to show you what a basic document search looks like. Once you click the View Search Master Documentation, Explorer Client opens to the view you see here. Here you can see where I've searched and found the document we just revised and released it to the master area, CCD 0000025. When you view the PDF rendition, you're going to see the exact same signature page and content that you see when you're in the Office client. Another way to see approved masters is through Maximo. Maximo is the system used by Grifols and Clayton for asset management and maintenance management. Before there was a Meridian link in Maximo, maintenance techs went to Maximo to get their work orders, and then they would kind of try to piece together what they thought they might need to perform the work, or maybe they wouldn't, and then they'd go to Meridian and start digging for it. Now, information in Meridian that contains an equipment number property is linked to Maximo and accessed with a single button click. A Meridian Explorer window opens, listing the associated documents and drawings. From there, the Maximo user can view required information and print what's needed. Now let's touch on SharePoint real quick. Meridian users can publish designated documents directly to SharePoint, which allows Grifols team members to collaborate with outside vendors involved in capital projects. We use defined workflows in SharePoint to route documents to the correct project site and document library. After the collaboration period is complete, Grifols document coordinators update Meridian with the latest content and prepare for the e-signature process. When we publish documents to SharePoint from the Meridian client, we're also able to include metadata for key properties. We accomplish this by setting up the SharePoint document library with standardized columns, which are mapped and configured in the Meridian publisher. Having this information automatically populated in SharePoint saves our project engineers a significant amount of time. Just like to talk to you a little bit about this in summary of what we went over. With Meridian, we're able to control our engineering and asset information in a highly regulated environment. The workflows are key to tracking that information as it goes through its revisions and getting modified in projects. Meridian ensures that FDA 21 CFR 11 is always managed and always taken into account. E-signatures are a really solid way to make sure that happens. And Meridian does a great job of adhering to that. Before Meridian, sometimes construction contractors would actually be given info that wasn't current. I mean, you get a drawing that wasn't the latest and greatest. With Meridian, we track everything. We know you know which one is the most current version, and that's what the contractors get. It really cuts down on construction mistakes like that. We integrate with Maximo, and that's made our mechanics pretty happy out there, because they used to have to get out of the system that they work in all day, Maximo. That's where their work orders are. And then they have to open up a different application and start working there. But now once they find that piece of equipment that they need in Maximo, they just click one button and the associated documents and drawings can then be displayed, and they can access them there. It's much easier for them. The integration with SharePoint, it makes it really easy to share information back and forth with vendor engineering companies, and in fact, we use it to share information amongst project teams in-house as well. Well, that's all I have for you. I hope you got a little something out of the last half hour and got a feel for how we use Meridian. For us, Meridian has been essential in getting and maintaining control of our documents and drawings. Now we're going to throw it back over to Susan for questions.
Thanks so much, David. That was great. So again, if you have questions, please type them into the question panel on the right side of your screen on the GoToWebinar toolbar, and I will read them to Ken or David for them to answer. So we have a question here regarding training. Can you describe your training plan, especially for those users who expect to use the system very infrequently?
We've simplified the way that we do our training so that there's just one set of training for everybody. Well, let me back up. If you're going to participate in the Meridian workflows and just be involved in editing and improving documents, then you need to be using the Explorer client, and we have one set of training for that. It's pretty involved and involves a few SOPs because it's very powerful and you can do a lot of things. But for Explorer client, just the consumers who are only looking at stuff in the master area, there's no required training for that at all. It's really pretty easy just to learn to click around in by yourself, honestly. But we do have a little 5-minute thing that kind of tells them how to go back and forth.
Great. Another question here. What changes did you have to make to Maximo, and did you have to revalidate the system after the fact?
The only change in Maximo was the addition of that button, and that's a little line of script. It did not require any validation. It was just a minimal impact thing. It was a change control issue, and just proved that it didn't do anything but what it was supposed to do. You press that button, and then it tosses it over the fence to Meridian, and the Meridian brings up the Explorer client. So most of the work is done outside of Meridian. Outside of Maximo.
Okay, another question here regarding the Maximo integration. Do you think the Maximo integration has benefited the maintenance organization. Do you have any feedback from the maintenance organization on the Maximo integration?
Absolutely. They love that one button click. As I was saying in the slides, they used to have to, they're in Maximo all day long, and that's where they interact with their work orders. They have to make documentation in that application all the time, so that's pretty much up on the computer all day long. If they have something new and they need to go get documents, now they just have to click that one button, and the one button will bring up all the documents and drawings they need. Now, we're still working on that, and we're making it more robust all the time. It requires a lot of the properties in Meridian to be lined up correctly. They need to reference the right documents, or the documents need to reference the right equipment. And like I said, we're working on that all the time and making it more and more robust. But they love it.
Great. Another question here. What happens when the drawing is changed on two different projects? How do the changes get combined?
That is really, you probably already know the answer to that one, because let me answer it this way. A lot of times when we're first showing somebody Meridian and they see that it's electronic and they see how much it does for them, all the tracking and routing and the email notifications and all that stuff that if you didn't have Meridian, you would be having to do it manually, have to walk around from desk to desk with this package that need to be signed off. You wouldn't know. It's hard to track how long it's been on someone's desk that way and that kind of thing. Well, with Meridian, it does all that automatically, and so people, it's kind of it seems to be an easy leap for folks to think that there's going to magically merge documents for you from this project copy and this project copy. But it takes sitting down at a table with other engineers. You've got your copy and they got theirs, and you decide how you're going to do it, and then you make the changes, and the Meridian handles that after the fact. You have to do the work of merging those documents.
Okay, another question here regarding the SharePoint integration. What are some examples of the type of documents that you're publishing to SharePoint?
Well, all types. Schedules go back and forth. Drawings certainly are things that go back and forth in SharePoint. That's primarily how our vendors would deliver drawings to us, is through SharePoint. And they can, on their SharePoint interface, they can be entering in the document name, the title, those kinds of things. And when it comes into Meridian, that's already populated because of the document library linking that gets done. But all kinds of documents, everything that you would use in a project for documentation can be passed through SharePoint.
Great. This is actually a question probably for Ken. Is Meridian able to integrate with other maintenance management systems other than Maximo?
Sure, I'll take that. Yes, SAP PM, Infor's EAM product, and Ultimo, and some facilities management products too. Essentially, the sky's the limit. The integration is so light that we're able to integrate with numerous legacy systems. It's quite an easy integration.
Great.
It's a repeatable process. It's not reinvented each time. It's a package deal.
Great. Okay, let's take one final question here. How would you suggest a plant with no systems today get started with the solution or convince management to move forward with the solution? For David.
Okay. That's an easy answer when you're talking about a highly regulated environment. Without some sort of control of some kind, some sort of document management system, I don't know how you do it, to be honest. And so if you're in a situation where you're highly regulated and you don't have control, that all you have to do is show them examples of how controlled this whole process is. That there are audit trails, there all the notifications are done automatically. The renditions that are unalterable as it goes from one part of the process to the next. It all made it very easy to sell. It's really important in a highly regulated environment to have that type of and that level of control.
Great. Okay, let's call that the end of the questions. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question today, we'll have somebody follow up with you individually. I know a lot of you have specific questions related to your company, so we'll make sure that somebody follows up with you. Otherwise, if you have any additional questions or would like to find out more information about other upcoming BlueCielo events, you can use the links that are provided on the screen here. And as a reminder to everybody, we will be sending out a thank you email with a link to view the recorded version of this webinar in case you want to watch it again or share it with other people in your organization. So with that, I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank David very much and Ken for presenting and sharing information with us all. And everybody have a great day.